The Starry Night by Anne Sexton. This poem is based on Van Gogh's Starry Night. It translates to me that the night is a place far different from the day. Sometimes anxiety and depression hit harder when the sun goes down, and you're left alone with dark and negative thoughts that fill the night sky. I want to die is repeated, and the poem ends with no cry, either perhaps from suicide to end the pain or falling asleep finally after wrestling with dark thoughts. The town does not exist except where one black-haired tree slips up like a drowned woman into the hot sky. The town is silent. The night boils with 11 stars. Oh, starry, starry night, this is how I want to die. It moves, they are all alive. Even the moon bulges in its orange irons to push children like a god from its eye. The old unseen serpent swallows up the stars. Oh, starry, starry night, this is how I want to die. Into that rushing beast of the night, sucked up by that great dragon to split from my life with no flag, no belly, no cry. Before You Came by Fayaz. This poem speaks to the fact that we often get too attached and put all of our hopes and will to live on others. The poem has high highs and low lows. This poem makes me think of codependence because of the person leaving the speaker. It will be lost. The world is ruined. Alcohol even turns into a mirror of their own sadness near the end of the poem. Before you came, things were as they should be. The sky was the dead end of sight. The road was just a road. Wine, merely wine. Now everything is like my heart, a color at the edge of blood. The gray of your absence, the color of poison, of thorns. The gold when we met, the season ablaze. The yellow of autumn, the red of flowers, of flames. And the black when you cover the earth with the coal of dead fires. And the sky, the road, the glass of wine. The sky is a shirt wet with tears. The road a vein about to break. And the glass of wine, a mirror in which the sky, the road, and the world keep changing. Don't leave me now that you're here. Stay, so that the world may become like itself again. So the sky may be the sky, the road a road, and the glass of wine not a mirror, just a glass of wine. The Street by Octavio Paz. This poem speaks to me as a metaphor of the street being life. The person in pursuit is the death-like, terrifying form of depression. The speaker is running from the darkness of their mental illness. Sometimes the negative thoughts of depression have no reason to be there, just like the pursuer isn't really there. At the end, the speaker realizes that he has been the pursuer following himself, just like his own thoughts have been perpetually plaguing him. Here is a long and silent street. I walk in blackness and I stumble and fall and rise and walk blind. My feet trampling the silent stones and the dry leaves. Someone behind me also tramples stones, leaves. If I slow down, he slows. If I run, he runs. I turn, nobody. Everything dark and doorless, only my steps aware of me. I turning and running among these concerns which lead forever to the street, where nobody waits for me, nobody follows me, where I pursue a man who stumbles and rises and says when he sees me, nobody. Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. A crow shook down on me seems like a reference to seasonal depression. Given my heart a change of mood speaks back to that theory. Rude means to bitterly regret. The speaker leaves us off with the fact that the snow now making them hyper-focus on negativity, even from just a single day. I would remind the speaker that a bad day doesn't make a bad life. Dust of snow. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. I Measure Every Grief I Meet by Emily Dickinson. The speaker measures her pain to the pain of others in this poem. Sometimes depression can make you compare your sadness to others' joys, and that makes the pain even worse. Dickinson explains this feeling and leaves us hanging with our questions never quite answered. She mentions how those around her that get over pain must be faking it, because she never gets over her pain. I measure every grief I meet with narrow, probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has an easier size. I wonder if they bore it long, or did it just begin? I could not tell the date of mine. It feels so old a pain. I wonder if it hurts to live, and if they have to try, and whether could they choose between, it would not be to die. I note that some, gone patient long, at length renew their smile, an imitation of a light that has so little oil. I wonder if when years have piled, some thousands on the harm that hurt them early, such a lapse could give them any balm, or would they go on aching still through centuries of nerve, enlightened to a larger pain in contrast with the love. The grieved are many, I am told, there is the various cause. Death is but one and comes but once, and only nails the eyes. There's grief to want, and grief of cold, a sort they call despair. There's banishment from native eyes inside of native air. And though I may not guess the kind correctly yet to me, a piercing comfort it affords in passing cavalry. To note the fashions of the cross and how they're mostly worn, still fascinated to presume that some are likely my own. Car Radio by Tyler Joseph from the band 21 Pilots. Pain is sometimes quieter with sounds to hide our thoughts. I relate to this song a lot because my car radio is actually broken, and I often sit in my car and overthink negative thoughts. Tyler Joseph actually wrote this song from his experience of having his car radio stolen. Sometimes we end up alone or in violent silence, and that can make us anxious or depressed. The car is continually hated on, like the car is the speaker's unwanted life or body, empty, with no music to fill the gaps. I ponder of something great, my lungs will fill and then deflate. They fill with fire, exhale desire, I know it's dire my time today. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought, 'cause somebody stole my car radio, and now I just sit in silence. Sometimes quiet is violent. I find it hard to hide it. My pride is no longer inside. It's on my sleeve. My skin will scream, reminding me of who I killed inside my dream. I hate this car that I'm driving. There's no hiding for me. I'm forced to deal with what I feel. There's no distraction to mask what is real. I could pull the steering wheel. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought, 'cause somebody stole my car radio, and now I just sit in silence. Henry Howard's The Soot Season. This poem dives into once again the issue of seasonal depression. Our speaker's world seems to slow down and darken, despite the fact that everything is coming alive. It'll be warm and sunny out. The speaker's pain springs forth despite everything, when everything sprung up months ago. the soot season that bud and bloom forth brings. When green hath clad the hill and eke the vale, the nightingale with feathers new she sings. The turtle to her hath told her tale. Summer is come, for eerie spring now way springs. The hart hath hung his old head on the pail. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. The fish float with new repaired scale. The otter all her slow away she slings. The swift swallow pursueth the flies small. The busy bee her honey now she wings. Winter in worn that was flower bale. And thus I see among these pleasant things, care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. Emily Dickinson, It was not death, for I stood up. Dickinson describes feeling so depressed that the feeling can be mistaken for death, but she still stands. The poem strikes me as having a tone of almost jealousy for those that get to keep laying down and be done with the pain of life. She is woken up at the end by the clock shining for noon. Sleeping in that late can be much needed sometimes, or a way to pretend to be dead to avoid the pain of life, which I feel like she is doing. It was not death, for I stood up, and all the dead lie down. It was not night, for the bells put out their tongues for noon. How could I be so lonely, surrounded by so many? By Cass Glasgow. Glasgow describes being depressed without an explanation. The speaker has a seemingly perfect life and seems to judge herself for being depressed. This phenomenon is common with major depressive disorder. She makes herself sadder by feeling guilty for being sad. How could I be so lost in a place I know so well? How could I be so broken in a family so together? How could I be so lonely, surrounded by so many? How could I be so unhappy, surrounded by so much beauty? How could I be me when even I remain a mystery? Life is Fine by Langston Hughes. Hughes paints a depressing picture of sinking into sadness, feeling the pain but not getting out of it. The exclamation points throughout the poem give a sense of desperation. Hughes captures what it feels like to be depressed and suicidal, but perhaps too afraid to go through with ending his own life. I went down to the river. I sat down on the bank. I tried to think but couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered. I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold in that water. It was cold. I took the elevator, 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered. I stood there and I cried. If it hadn't been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there. It was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. Though you may hear me holler, and you may see me cry, I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you're gonna see me die. Life is fine, fine as wine. Life is fine.